We're visiting with a local businessman who has his finger on the pulse of South Carolina's economy. You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're in the Elizabeth Maddox Chapin Building on the Grand Strand campus of Horry Georgetown Technical College. We're visiting with Dan Gray, the president of the Gray Companies and a board member for the South Carolina State Board for Technical and Comprehensive Education. Good morning, Dan.
Morning, Greg.
Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure.
Obviously, you were with us a little less than a month ago when we were up at Florence Darlington Tech and had the entire week focused on technical education in South Carolina. You were so instrumental to make that week a success and a reality, having all those schools recognized throughout our community in Sumter and Kingstree and Williamsburg, obviously up in Marlborough and Chesterfield and Shirley, Florence Darlington Tech and Horry Georgetown Tech. Amazing display of some wonderful people there. Thank you so much for helping make that a reality.
Well, you're welcome, and we want to thank you and Channel 43 for allowing the state tech system to be featured that way. Very gracious of you.
Well, we wanted to have a follow-up, Dan. You were so exciting that day, and I heard a number of viewers call me and say, I didn't know Dan Gray had done all that, and we only had about 13 or 14 minutes that day, so I wanted to have an opportunity to get you in. Sure. Having had Dr. Hudgens yesterday and Henry Poston on Tuesday, it sure is exciting to get you in. Can you tell us about your family's history here in Myrtle Beach, Dan? I think it goes back to the 1700s or so.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. As a matter of fact, there was an article in the Sun News, I think Sunday, that really reminded me of my family history. My mother was a Nance, and her family came from Shallotte. And there are still Nances in Shallotte and Merle's Inlet and Jacksonville, Florida. They lived in those days on the creek, as it were, literally fishing and shrimping and crabbing. And her mother was a Todd. And the Todd family came to what's now Myrtle Beach in the 1880s from the area along the east bank of the Waccamaw River where 22 intersects with Highway 90. That area, community or area was called Hand at that time. And so the Todd family and others, Edge, Chestnut, Vaught, they all go back to pre-Revolutionary War times in that same area.
That is amazing.
Yes, it is.
When we think about the Nances, obviously a lot of folks think about Merle's Inlet, and they think about Nance's Restaurant right there on the water. Is that some, I guess that would have some relation.
Yes, that was Hobby Nance. That was my mother's uncle. And Dan Nance, whom I'm named after, was her father. And they had migrated from Shallotte, and there's still Nance seafood places in the Shallotte area, Calabash.
Son of a gun. Dan, in which area did you spend your childhood?
I grew up on 4th Avenue North in Myrtle Beach, right beside the First Baptist Church parsonage. So the Baptist Church has been, and still is, a large part of my life, and all my childhood memories are on 4th Avenue North in Myrtle Beach and springing out from there.
That is wild, Dan. Can we share with some of the viewers, obviously you know the bulk of our viewers are in the PD and southeastern North Carolina. A lot of folks may not have familiarity with 4th Avenue North, but they would have familiarity with having come to the beach many, many times. Can you talk about growing up in Myrtle Beach and maybe some of the aspects of the beach that we no longer have that you may miss a little bit?
Well, 4th Avenue North would only be 4 blocks from town center. And all my life was 4 or 5 blocks or so from where I lived. Withers Swash was a big playground. And town center was 4 blocks away. And on Saturdays, that's where you went for the matinee movies. And the ocean was less than 4 blocks away. And so everything centered around that area in my life. The school was 1 block away. Chapin Library was just within walking distance, so and bicycling distance. So we had just a great time coming up in Myrtle Beach in the 40s and 50s.
And obviously the 40s or 50s a goodly number of years ago, as we think about years gone by and some of the changes you've seen in Myrtle Beach, Dan. Golly, I'm so glad we're in today. Where did you go to school, Dan?
Well, of course, I went to first through the 12th grade here in Myrtle Beach. As a matter of fact, I was chatting with someone who works with TV production people here, Nat Adams. Nat and I went through grades 1 through 12 together in Myrtle Beach, and then after that I went to Clemson and graduated there.
Son of a gun! You finished at Clemson. Did you come straight back to the beach? Or?
No. I when I was at Clemson, I joined the Marine Corps. It was called the Platoon Leaders Class. And I was also in Army ROTC, which at that time was required. We had universal drafts back in those days, so every young man coming along had an obligation to complete his military duty. And then I also worked with the Southern Railway System for a couple of years.
Was that was during your service in the obviously after your service in the military?
I combined college and my first professional job with the railroad and the Marine Corps. They all worked together. I ended up in the Marine Corps Reserve as a rifle company platoon sergeant. I was with the 53rd Rifle Company aboard the naval base down in Charleston, and also worked with the Southern Railway System, and also was a student at Clemson.
Wow, Dan. How about your first business venture following your military service, the Marine service there?
Well, as I said, I was with the Southern Railway System.
Right.
And they were a big transportation company. It's called Norfolk Southern now. And after several years, I decided that working for a transportation company was very difficult because you were frequently away from home, especially at the entry level, the training level. So my dad had started what later became Graco Steel Corporation. He started Gray Welding Company after World War II. And I asked if I could join the company. After having been out in the world, I decided that there was a better world here in Myrtle Beach where I could be with my family. And so I started work at Graco Steel in the mid-'60s.
How exciting, Dan. And you know, to be able to ask, so oftentimes you have a parent begging a child to come back to work with them. And obviously, since you'd gone out on your own a little bit, it was probably a good time, maybe a little humbling to come back and say, Dad, can I come work with you? What was your first position there, Dan?
Well, when you start, you always start as a trainee. And so I had actually received training as a welder when I was in high school. My dad wanted to make sure that I, quote unquote, knew a trade. So he sent me to Troy, Ohio, near Dayton. And I spent the summer that I turned 16 in this little town on the Miami River. And I graduated from Hobart Brothers Trade School, I believe was the name of it. And most of the students there were Korean War veterans learning a trade. And but my instructors encouraged me to take a test as I was finishing the instruction. And I actually was certified to weld bridges in Ohio when I was 16. Now, of course, I couldn't work there.
Right,
but
sure.
So I started as in welding, and I started in engineering graphics, and started in estimating and takeoff, and worked my way up as and became an estimator, project manager, and then production manager, and later as president of the company.
That's amazing, Dan. Now, Graco Steel's obviously still around.
Yes, we actually closed the part that was the most active. We closed that about 10 years ago. We did steel fabrication for building construction, but one of our longtime employees wanted to continue with the part that we called Graco Detention Equipment. And that's just a fancy name for jails and prisons. Actually, building construction became unprofitable, but the justice industry is today a high-growth industry. We're still building a lot of jails and prisons. And so that individual has kept that part of Graco Steel going and has moved it to Augusta, Georgia.
Is that right?
Yes.
Great. So you still stayed involved
Yes.
really through him.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Now, at some point, you set up a management firm, Dan, and have been real active with that, the great companies.
Yes, that's an umbrella for several companies that I'm involved with. We have a small company that has outdoor billboards, and another company that does commercial real estate. And with other partners, we have River Oaks Golf Plantation, and with my son Wayne and other family members, we have the Springhouse Family Restaurants and some other things. But you get the picture. It's kind of an umbrella of several organizations.
Absolutely, yeah. When did you get interested in building a golf course, Dan, or being involved with the group building River Oaks?
River Oaks Golf Plantation, we actually started in May, 20 years ago of '83. I called the Vice President for Development with International Paper Realty, and I just said brashly, listen, you got a lot of land down here and you don't know what to do with it. So, and I'm down here, can we get together? And he said, can you put a golf course deal together? And I said, yeah. He said, I need it done in 6 weeks. And I said, sure. 18 months later, we had syndicated and gotten the course financed. But we opened River Oaks in '87.
87. Yeah. So got the ball moving back in May of '83, and then
yes.
opened in '87.
Yes.
Is that a normal timetable? Some of the efforts, I mean, so many courses on the Strand, such a big effort to get these courses located, to decide where's the prime location, to really make it work.
Yes.
It's a big deal, Dan.
Actually, siting and building a golf course is very much an agricultural product or project. And if you view it from that perspective, you're less likely to make errors. And so you've got to get the right land, you've got to see that it's drained, you've got to prepare the land for the crop, in this case Bermuda grass, your playing surface, plus your greens grasses. And then you've got to present it well so that the public wants to buy it, meaning reserve tee time. And so, yes, it usually takes several years or more to put a group together and get your financing in place, and then another several years or so to get it built.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk real quick, Dan, about the responsibilities of being involved in golf course management and oversight?
Well, in that sense, it's not any different than any other business. Your number one thing is to find your market niche and serve your customers well. And then, as I say, keep in mind that you have an asset that's maybe worth $5 to $10 million to replace. And so it's very important that you maintain it. And it's a growing thing that's subject to all sorts of ills and diseases and damage. And the number one thing that people look for is a good golfing experience from tee to green.
You got it. You got it. Are you a golfer yourself, Dan?
I have played frequently, and right now I'm in a down period. It's I get bored after about 9 holes. Maybe that's because I'm not so good. I can play in the 90s, I can play a lot or play a little, and it never changes.
Right, right. Dan, as the managing general partner of the great company, if you're so active in so many companies, how does your mind stay focused? You talked about niche. I'm glad you used the word niche, finding the real niche audience, either with the outdoor company, or Springhouse Restaurants, or River Oaks. How do you keep your hand involved in so much?
Well, I'm blessed to be associated with people who are a lot better than me. And they do all the work. I'm 61 now, and I pull my time, so to speak, from between 20 and now. And in the meantime, I've kind of figured out who to associate with. And I really am not that much involved in operations. I just try to stay out of the way of the people who are.
Mm-hmm. What's it like working with your son, Wayne, now, Dan?
Well, Wayne's a unique individual. I admire him. He works hard, and he's very dedicated and has good ideas. His expertise is in financial analysis, and he was educated at Presbyterian College and spent some 8 years or so in banking. But he's good in a lot of other ways. And again, my job, I told him when we came together to acquire the Springhouse Restaurants that I did not want to peel potatoes or wash dishes or wait on tables, that I would stay out of the way. And but it is interesting, and so you have a lot more involvement with your family members if you're also in business with them.
And Dan, all of your children have stayed in the area, is that right?
Well, my oldest son, Danny, is manager of our Myrtle Beach store.
Mm-hmm.
And our daughter, Danette, works in marketing in our company office.
Mm-hmm.
And she helps in the restaurants and the golf course. And our younger son, Roger, or not younger son, but our middle son, Roger, was just named principal at Myrtle Beach Middle School.
That's right. Big news.
Yeah.
Education is in the gray blood.
Well, Roger, I remember his mother saying that he was having a discussion with her sometime about how he probably could make more money. Roger's got a very good mind, and but he loved what he did so much, involvement with children, and so Roger actually gets to live out his passion and his dream of working with kids. Does a good job.
He does a great job of it. Dan, obviously there's so many things we want to talk to you about. Surely growing up here at the beach and seeing some of the changes here and raising 4 amazing kids in the area. Can we take a break and come back?
Of course.
Right. We're visiting with Dan Gray. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We're visiting with Dan Gray. Dan, what was your first service on a civic organization here in the area?
I joined Rotary. Actually, I'm in my 40th year in Rotary. And in terms of a civic association, I guess Rotary would be my first. But as a result of that, people were asking me to become Sun Fun chairman, and so I can't remember which year, but it was circa '69 or so. I was chair of the Sun Fun Festival. Actually, Sharon Tate of I believe Don't Go Near the Water. She was our movie star celebrity who came in that year, and then as a result of that, I got involved with the chamber board and became vice president, and I recall that the year that I was membership chairman or vice president was the first year that the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce had $100,000 in membership dues. They gave me a little bowl, which I still have.
Oh yeah, damn, big year.
Yeah. So that was my first involvement.
You grew to our state's active enough. You said 40 years now with Chicora Rotary. I think I saw that you were president at one time.
Yes, Chicora. I was 15 years with Myrtle Beach Rotary Club,
Okay.
And then in '79, when that club got too big, and we needed to start a new club, I was asked to help with the Chicora Club, and Charlie Hughes, who was head of CNS Bank at the time, was our first president, and I was our second president.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, Dan, you've also been really active with both county and local organizations. What are some of those that you've been a member of or are still active member of?
Well, up until a year or so ago, I was a member of the Horry County Planning Commission, and I was there for almost 22 years.
Golly.
I was on board from its inception as a charter member, if you will. We began in 1980. I left there when I was named to the State Technical Education Board, and that's the way our state works. It's called dual office holding. And but I enjoyed all those years with the Horry County Planning Commission.
Dan, when you think about all those associations that have enabled you to be active, and keep your finger on the pulse of so much of what happens in this community as well as throughout the state, are there any of them in particular that stand out in your mind that have really meant, obviously they've all meant a heck of a lot to you, are there any that stick out in your mind that you think you've had the biggest impact on personally?
Well, my involvement with the Planning Commission saw us go from no planning at all to the planning that we have today, and also involvement in, for instance, the new road system that we have now. And I was a member of the executive committee of the Carolina Bays Task Force, and along with many others who did much more than I. every time we ride on these new roads that we have now, it's just a sense of pride. And the new developments, knowing that they're being guided by the development guidelines that we put in on the Planning Commission and so forth.
Yeah, Stan. And as you think through not only your involvement on the Planning Commission, but as a member and Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, can you talk real quick about how businesses have changed here in the area?
Well, we're much more sophisticated. As you know, we're a metropolitan statistical area, I believe is the name of it, and so it's much more complicated, much more demanding. You have to be much more versed. I don't want to make light of the earlier days, but it used to be you could open a restaurant or a motel or a golf course or a whatever, and you build it and they would come. And you would operate it primarily from from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then you would take a rest and get ready for the next year. Nowadays, it's year-round, much more involved, much more demanding, much more sophisticated.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sophisticated is the big word. And what do you think is the biggest challenge that our area faces in economic growth?
Well, managing the growth. Economic development, because of the profit motive, the infrastructure and the understory, if you will, the undergirding of our hospitality industry will take care of itself. Mm-hmm. But for residents now, we've come into the big time, and we're into the new century, and the follow-on infrastructure. I'm not sure if that's a legitimate term, but I'll use it. That's going to be very demanding because all governments are really facing severe times, and how we're going to deal with the schools and the hospitals and the roads and the water and sewer and the drainage, those are going to be the big challenges for all of us, whether you call it the business sector or the public sector or the government sector.
Golly, Dan, as I sit here and think about that it will be very difficult to handle.
Yes.
It's really almost, I mean, you take that with a level of fear at some level.
Well, the schools are being really challenged right now, K through 12 and then higher ed. Survivability of our school system as we know it in these very tough economic times is one of our major challenges going forward. But you could also say that about highways. We're blessed right now because we're right in the midst of a $1 billion program. Drainage, quality housing, emergency services, police and fire, EMS. All of those are out there, and there's just not enough money to take care of all of our needs.
Well, Dan, education is probably your middle name. When you think about, obviously, your son, Roger, as the new principal of Myrtle Beach Middle, have the opportunity to talk to him about K through 12, but then to be seated as the first district representative on the South Carolina State Board for Technical Education. As you think through all those aspects of how education impacts our economy and vice versa, can we think through what has made the biggest impact in enabling you to sit back and see and figure out how we can help accomplish some of the very important tasks in front of us?
Well, right now, let's just start with higher ed, for instance. Funding higher ed, whether it's our research universities or our four-year teaching colleges or our technical education system, funding that and providing for that. And I'm more familiar with the state tech system, of course. Our mission is to foster economic growth through providing skilled workers and also through training and educating workers for the new workforce that's demanded. So the economic survivability of that and the continuance of that mission, especially at the technical education level, is what I see as a big challenge for education. But there are many others.
When you think about changes in the foreseeable future for tech college system statewide, and I know Jim talked about that yesterday, Dr. Hudgens talked about it yesterday, the impact of the lottery on the system. Is there a most important pressing issue facing us that we need to be thinking about?
Well, money. It always comes down to money. I'm sorry that's my theme for today. But the mission of the state tech system is not going to change in the new century as from the old century, and that was that was developed by Senator Ernest Hollings when he was governor,
Mm-hmm.
and that is that we needed to provide a trained workforce, and we needed to upgrade the socio-economic life of our residents. That part's not going to change, but the state tech system itself and the local colleges are taking advantage of new technology issues, such as what's called distance learning. And you can have a class in one location that reaches all 16 schools. That's the way to multiply your dollar in its effect. We'll be doing those kinds of things more.
The great thing about sitting here with you, Dan, is you had that technical education. Your father sent you off to Ohio to get that aspect.
Yes.
At age 16, prior to attending Clemson, prior to getting in the Marines, prior to coming back to work with your dad. When you think about that, is that the first childhood job you had, Dan?
No, my first childhood job was I sold newspapers on the street. And when we get off camera, I'll give you my newspaper yell that I used on the street. But I used to sell papers for a nickel, and I got 1.5 cents a paper. And I would sell 100 papers a day. And tips were my big thing. But I had all the money I needed. I mean, I could get about $20 or $25 a week, and that was more than I could spend. Really.
No doubt. Dan, that's amazing. That is fantastic. Well, I can't wait till we get off camera. And I hate to say that because we're visiting with an amazing man, Dan Gray, the president of the Gray Companies and very active 1st District member of the South Carolina State Board for Technical Education. Dan, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Gray.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank Dan Gray for making today's Carolina People so special. And come out and visit the Elizabeth Maddox Chapin Building here on the Grand Strand campus of Louis Georgetown Technical College.